Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going to try to wrap our heads around infinity, knowledge, and the nature of reality itself.
Sounds ambitious.
It is. But we've got some pretty amazing source material to guide us. We'll be looking at Jorge Luis Borges' short story, The Library of Babel, and the spiritual text, The Law of One.
So we've got a fictional world of endless books and channeled messages from an alleged extraterrestrial being. This should be interesting.
It really should. One is a mind-bending work of fiction, the other a deep dive into spirituality and the universe. But who knows? Maybe we'll find some unexpected connections along the way.
I'm sure we will.
So, to start us off, let's talk about the Library of Babel. It drops us right into this, well, universe-sized library containing every possible book.
Every single one.
It's a pretty wild concept,
Yeah.
right? I mean, imagine a library where every combination of letters and punctuation exists.
Every book ever written. And every book that could ever be written. All in one impossible space.
Okay, yeah, that's almost too much to handle. Every truth, every falsehood, every story, every scientific discovery, every bit of nonsense, all crammed together.
Borges paints a pretty vivid picture of this. In the story, he writes, "When it was proclaimed that the library contained all books, the first impression was one of extravagant happiness.
Makes sense. I mean, it'd be like having access to literally all knowledge, right?
But then it takes a turn. That happiness quickly turns to despair because the librarians realize, how can you find anything truly meaningful in that endless chaos?
Right. Like if everything's in there, how do you know what's important, what's real?
Exactly. It becomes an overwhelming, even paralyzing experience.
And that's where I think the Law of One comes in with a really fascinating perspective.
Oh, how so?
Well, it talks about the universe being created by this single logos, this
Mhm.
divine source that sets up a framework for all possibilities.
A blueprint of sorts.
Yeah, kind of. Like it specifically says the logos is a creator of beingness, a focal point of energy. So there's this idea that even with infinite possibilities, there's still an underlying structure.
Okay, so that doesn't necessarily contradict the vastness Borges describes, right? The library is still huge, containing every possible combination. It's just finite in a certain sense, like it's built on a fixed set of characters.
I see what you mean, like a coded system.
Yeah. What if our reality, even though it seems limitless to us, is also based on a finite set of building blocks?
Whoa, that's a huge thought. So even with infinite potential, there are still fundamental limits.
It makes you wonder if there really is a limit to knowledge.
Definitely. A finite set of building blocks,
Yeah.
but infinite possibilities. That's really messing with my head. But then how does that square with the idea of infinity? Wouldn't true infinity imply boundless possibility going beyond any structure or framework?
And that's a fantastic question. It gets right to the heart of what both Borges and Ra are grappling with. Does a framework automatically rule out true infinity? Or could it be that infinity, at least the way we understand it, is structured in ways we can't even grasp yet?
So instead of chaotic and limitless, maybe it's more like dot organized complexity beyond our current grasp.
I do so.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. A little bit, anyway.
Good. Now, let's go back to those librarians in Borges' story. They spend their lives searching for meaning within the library, often getting driven mad by the sheer volume of information. Their big obsession. They're looking for these legendary books called vindications.
Vindications, what are those?
Supposedly, each vindication explains and justifies an individual's entire existence, gives their life meaning.
Ah, the eternal search for meaning and purpose. It's like how we turn to religion, philosophy, self-help, anything to give us a sense of direction in this big, confusing world. Or, in this case, a big, confusing library.
Exactly. And the Law of One speaks to this too. Right puts a lot of emphasis on self-discovery as the path to understanding the Creator.
So both sources are saying that we can't just passively wait for meaning to find us. We have to actively seek it out.
It seems that way. But I'm curious, what stands out to you about this whole idea of searching for meaning amid a sea of information?
What really gets me is the almost tragic irony of it all. The library contains all knowledge, but it's so vast that it becomes impossible to find the specific knowledge you're actually looking for. It's like maybe the search itself is more important than finding the answer.
That's interesting. And you know, that ties in with another key idea from the Law of One. Ra talks about the importance of catalysts.
Catalyst, remind me.
It's all about those challenges and experiences, good and bad, that force us to learn, grow, and evolve spiritually.
Oh, right, right.
So what if we look at the Library of Babel through that lens? What if each book represents a potential set of catalysts, each one leading to a different outcome, a different path?
Whoa, so the library itself is a kind of catalyst.
It could be. Think about it. The library becomes the symbol of immense possibility, of the potential for growth. But at the same time, there's also the potential to get totally lost, like those librarians who wander aimlessly through its endless halls.
Yeah, that's a good point. It highlights how daunting the journey of self-discovery can be, whether we're talking about infinite books or, like in the Law of One, countless incarnations across multiple densities.
Exactly. Both sources present us with this feeling of being completely overwhelmed by possibility.
So then, how do we navigate that? How do we even begin to make choices when we're faced with an infinity of
Oh,
paths?
well, maybe that's where free will comes into play.
And that's what we'll explore next time. Stay tuned, folks.
Welcome back. We're right in the middle of untangling this web of infinity, knowledge, and the nature of reality.
Yeah, my brain's still buzzing from that whole finite building blocks, infinite possibilities thing. It really makes you rethink how you see infinity, right?
It totally does. And, it connects really well with what we were talking about earlier with Catalyst and all the different choices represented in Borges' library.
Right, all those potential paths, all those different experiences. So each book in the library is like a potential set of catalysts leading to a different outcome. Is that what
Yeah.
we're saying?
That's a really great way to think about it. Each book is a different path, right? Each page is a different experience, even each word a different thought. Imagine the vastness of that potential.
Whoa, it's kind of exciting. And also kind of terrifying. Like to think that every choice we make, big or small, could send us down a completely different path.
It's like we're choosing between millions of different books constantly without even realizing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings up another interesting point from the Law of One, doesn't it? What about veil of forgetting?
Oh, yes. That's a big one. That metaphysical barrier, right? Separating us from our higher selves and our past lives. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine being thrown into this giant library, but you have no memory of who you are, where you've been, or what you're even looking for. Would that change how you navigate those endless shelves?
Oh man, that would be so disorienting to be like we're all these librarians with amnesia just fumbling around in the dark,
Yeah.
trying to piece together our own stories, but without knowing the full context.
Exactly. And that amnesia, that veil, it makes the whole idea of catalyst even more powerful. We're always
Right.
encountering these experiences that are meant to shape us, but we don't have the full awareness of why, or even how, or who we truly are.
It's like we're stumbling through a maze blindfolded.
That's a good analogy, but, that's where free will comes in. According to the law of one, we always have the power to choose. Even with this veil, we're not just puppets on strings, right?
Right, right. The Law of One is pretty clear about that. But even though we might be fumbling around, we can still decide which way to turn, which book to pick up, which experience to embrace.
Exactly. So we're not just passively wandering through this library. We're actually like creating our own paths as we go.
Okay, so we're not just readers in this cosmic library, we're also writers. Every choice, every action adds a new page to our story, or maybe even a whole new book.
And that's a really powerful way to look at it. It's not about finding the right book. It's about the process of creation, this constant unfolding of our own unique narratives.
I like that. Okay, now this might be a bit of a touchy subject, but I want to bring up something else from the Law of One. This whole idea of polarity, service to self versus service to others. I'm curious, how does that connect to the Library of Babel?
Well, think about those librarians again, right? They represent a bunch of different approaches to knowledge and service. Some, as we were saying, are driven mad, consumed by the search for their own vindication. Could that be seen as like a more self-serving approach?
I see what you mean. They're so focused on finding the one answer that validates their own existence that they don't see the bigger picture.
Right, but then you have others who dedicate themselves to organizing and preserving the library. They recognize that its vastness and complexity might not yield simple answers. They see the value in, like, maintaining this repository of knowledge for everyone.
That's more like service to others. It's recognizing that knowledge isn't just about personal gain, it's about contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. And in the law of one, that underlying motivation, that choice is what's emphasized. It's not about judging one approach as right or wrong. It's about understanding how those choices, those polarities shape our experiences and contribute to the bigger picture of like the evolution of consciousness. It's fascinating that Borges explores these same themes through his librarians and how differently they react to the library.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. It's almost like the library is this testing ground for those choices, a place where service to self and service to others are constantly interacting.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads us to this concept of harvest in the Law of One. It's this process where souls are essentially graduated to higher densities based on their spiritual development and their alignment with either service to self or service to others.
So it's like we're not just aimlessly wandering through this library. There's an ultimate goal, a destination we're moving toward.
That's how the Law of One describes it, yeah. And the choices we make, the paths we choose, those determine what density we are harvested into.
Okay, so those who have cultivated love, compassion, and a genuine desire to serve others, those are the ones who are likely to progress to a more harmonious realm.
That's the general idea. And those who focus more on power, control, or just personal gain, they might end up in a density that reflects those same things.
But even then, it all comes back to free will, right?
Yeah.
We're not just assigned a destiny. We can change course, learn, grow, and shift our orientation. It's like we're all writing our own endings to our stories within this vast, mysterious library of Babel.
And that's what makes it so profound, isn't it? We're not just characters, we're the authors. We're active participants in this grand cosmic narrative.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious about one more thing. What about distorted perception? How does that fit into all this? Especially with the veil of forgetting and everything.
That's a great question, and it's something that plays a huge role in all of this.
So we've got this cosmic library of infinite possibilities, all these choices we make, and the whole idea of service to self versus service to others. But where does distorted perception fit into all of this?
Oh, it's a big one. It's like a crucial piece of the whole puzzle. Think
Yeah.
about those librarians we were talking about, right? The ones who go crazy searching for meaning in the Library of Babel.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like the perfect example of how distorted perception can really mess us up. I mean, they're literally surrounded by all knowledge, but they can't see the forest for the trees.
They're so blinded by their own search for answers that they miss the bigger picture entirely.
Exactly. And, it really resonates with what Ra teaches about the veil of forgetting in the Law of One. That veil, it distorts how we see things, makes it hard to see the underlying unity that connects everything.
So it's like we're all wearing these cosmic blinders,
Hmm.
stumbling around the library, mistaking shadows for substance.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. We cling to these little bits of knowledge as if they were the whole truth, and that keeps us from seeing the bigger picture.
But it seems like both Borges and the Law of One offer some hope too, right?
Absolutely. In Borges' story, there's this really intriguing character called the Man of the Book. He's this legendary figure who supposedly figured out the library's secrets, achieved like total enlightenment.
I got it right.
Borges never actually shows us this character, but just the idea that such a being exists, well, it offers a little glimmer of hope.
So even in this overwhelming labyrinth of information, someone, somewhere, has managed to break through and see reality for what it is.
That's the suggestion.
Yeah.
And the Law of One, it echoes this with its whole teaching on spiritual evolution, the process of harvest and all that. Ra tells us that we can actually transcend these distortions. We can pierce the veil and awaken to our true nature, as beings of light and love.
So it's not about being perfectly objective. It's more about recognizing our own distortions and working to see beyond them.
That's exactly it. It's about cultivating discernment,
Yeah.
learning to separate the illusions of the material world from those eternal principles of love, compassion, and interconnectedness. The stuff at the heart of creation.
It's like we're all these little librarians, each one of us tasked with figuring out how to navigate the library with more awareness, more wisdom, a deeper understanding of what shapes our perception.
I like that analogy. And as we move forward on this journey, we shed layers of distortion and start to awaken to our true nature. And then we become more than just readers in the library. We become co-creators. We start contributing to the expansion of consciousness and the evolution of the universe itself.
Which brings us back to the idea of service, right? Those wanderers that Ra talked about. The souls who choose to incarnate here on Earth to help the planet evolve, they're basically choosing to enter the library, knowing all the challenges and risks involved.
It's a truly amazing act of service. It really speaks to the power of love to overcome the limitations of the veil and light the way toward unity.
It all circles back to free will again, doesn't it? We're not just pawns in some cosmic game.
Not at all. We have the power to choose, to learn, to grow, to change our direction, and to impact the course of our own evolution. It's our choices that decide the outcome of our journey through this library of Babel.
So we can get lost in the endless stacks. Or we can choose to embrace the mystery, work on our discernment, and dedicate ourselves to something bigger than our own desires.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the Library of Babel and the Law of One, I'll leave you with this thought. What if the library isn't just a metaphor for all knowledge, but a reflection of our own inner world? What if that infinite potential is inside each of us?
What if the search for meaning isn't just out there, but also within? It's definitely a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us today on this wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep choosing your own path. We'll see you all soon.